So Twitter rules, basically. And as we'll see later, we can also link data from the runbook or from Smart CLI into our incident and display it. Now here we can see what maps are currently available. Diagnoses. Diagnoses are predefined self-contained sets of automation, typically intents, that are created by typically super users for us. And what's nice about these is not only are they available right in incidents where they seem to be relevant according to the system, but we can also, when we create a portal, so if I go in here, enable a portal, I can actually allow selected diagnoses to be used by portal users as well. So whether or not you're going to have any diagnoses available in your environment depends on if anybody's built anything. I don't think there's any of them out of the box, at least at this point. So for the portal, there's all different settings. We can go over them after class in detail if anyone wants, but they're pretty self-explanatory. But the big thing is, once I've made any changes to the portal settings here, I need to click Save, or it's not going to work. And so here, I'll put the link to the portal in the chat for you guys as well, so you can view the portal and see what it looks like so. And so again, you don't need to be, being in here is not taking up a seat license, and I can still see the chat from here. I can contribute to the chat from here. How cool is that? All right, so that concludes our overview of SMIP, Search, Map, Incident, Portal. Any questions about anything? Yeah, go for it.
Is there any integration with this functionality into like Teams or Zoom or Slack?
I think, yes, I think I mentioned it earlier, but we can link a NetBrain incident to a Teams thread with a two-way chatbot.
Oh, okay. So you can have someone in NetBrain chatting and then someone else in Teams, and they're chatting together.
You can indeed. It has to be, you have to like create the Teams thread and then link it together. We can go over what's involved in that after class. I actually haven't played with that in a while, so it'll be, we'll figure it out after class if you want. But basically, the short answer is you go in here and it's Teams integration, and then I forget what all you have to do. There's something you have to set up on the back end ahead of time as well. But anyway, we go into all that after class. Yes, it's only Teams at the moment, so any other integrations, more may be forthcoming. I hope so, certainly, but at the moment, that's the only one we've got. And to be clear, I'm talking about integration of incidents. Now, more general integration, which will either allow NetBrain to pull data from the other system or allow the other system to trigger actions within NetBrain. Those you can set up to any other system that supports RESTful API. Or even now, anything that can send an email as well, at least for the triggering part. So that's much more flexible, and that can work with just about anything. But that's, again, an after-class conversation if you want to know what's involved in that. All right, any other questions about anything we've discussed thus far? All right, so now let us return to the slide deck briefly. Okay, so now that we have our dynamic map built, now we're going to use it as our user interface into the map to gather our information and analyze it and see the results. So let's talk about adaptive automation. So adaptive automation, there's three different frameworks for adaptive automation. The primary one, the one we're seeing on this slide, and the one we're going to be working with the most usually, is what are called network intents. Network intents are little pieces of automation that are built to look at one or more specific devices when triggered. And when they do that, they're going to pull the device's config file, one or more CLI commands, or both, and then they're going to extract certain variables from the results. And then they're going to check those results against certain conditions. Basically, we have a certain, we have one or more criteria, very much like with the advanced search, and then say how these criteria relate. And we get a Boolean expression. So, error counter greater than 0 might be one criterion, or whatever. And if that statement is true, A and B, A or B, things like that, if that statement is true, then the author programs into the intent, if it's true, is that good or is that bad? So what I'm getting at is, or trying to, is that what we're really doing is we're playing red light, green light on a very specific element of configuration on a very specific device or devices. And the idea is you build lots of these things, lots and lots and lots of them. They're very easy to build, very simple. Most of the time, it's going to be checking one specific aspect of configuration on one specific device. And the purpose of these, each one, is going to either be to confirm a specific piece of design intent. In other words, to make sure that a particular aspect of configuration on a specific device is the way it's supposed to be, that the design intent of the architect is being respected. The other is if we have known symptom sets for common problems or even uncommon problems, and we want to check to see if those symptom sets are manifesting. And so we build an intent to check and see if those symptoms have manifested. And then it'll pop up typically what we call status codes, which is literally red or green flags, that with some more information about why it's good or why it's bad. And the idea is, like I said, you build lots of these, but you don't build them, you don't build hundreds of thousands of these things or tens of thousands by hand. What you do is, let's say you want to run the same check on 100 different devices. You build one intent looking at one device, and then you replicate that across the other 99 using either a network intent template, a network intent cluster, or both. And so in the 200 series, 201, we're going to talk about what underlies all types of adaptive automation, something called a parser file that I'm not going to talk about today. In 202, we talk about building network intents and other and simple other types of automation. And then in 203, we talk about scaling up intents. And then in 204, we talk about specifically the NetBrain change management module, which is an optional extra. So in terms of how we can use intents or entire clusters of intents, which is one of the ways we replicate it, we can do that from a runbook step. We can just pick a particular intent that we know about to run, or that might have been pre-designated as part of a runbook template that we'll talk about. We also, however, our power users can turn our intents into sort of a menu of checks that we can make, and this is called auto intent, as we see here. So auto intent allows us to see for the current devices on the current map what diagnostics are available to run on them. And then we can pick and choose, I want to run this check on this particular device. And then we can put these checks together into an intent object and run it and see what's going on. And if that's a check, a combination of these diagnoses, if we want to run that repeatedly, we would then save that intent for later use. So that can be incredibly useful. The other two types of adaptive automation are data view templates and QApps. So first I need to explain what a data view is. A data view is a set of information that can be overlaid on the dynamic map at will. If anyone else is old enough to remember physical printed maps, that and then people used to use clear plastic overlays over them to view different data sets without changing the underlying map. I mean, I have to go back to kindergarten literally to remember that, but I am technically old enough. But that's the idea behind a data view. And so any of these three types of adaptive automation can produce a data view. We can turn the results of most intents into a simple red-green heat map data view, just overlaying red flags or green flags on the device, and then the summaries of what has been found on each device that we've checked. So that can be useful. A data view template is all about specifically pulling a certain set of data, usually relating to a particular technology or a particular use case, and then creating a data view, just laying it out below the devices, along the link lines, maybe representing certain data visually with colored highlights. And so that is what that's for. So if we just want to gather and view a data set very quickly and easily on demand, that is what a data view template is for. And then if we want to do something more complicated in terms of data analysis, or if we want to use a more unusual type of output, we use a QApp, or quick automation application. These are full-scale little programs within NetBrain, all built by point and click, but it is a full-scale program, and so it is a little more involved to make a QApp than it is to make a DVT or a network intent. So basically, we turn to QApps when the other two won't do. So those are our three types of adaptive automation in brief at a high level. So any questions about what I've explained up to this point? Again, we will get into the nitty-gritty in just a bit. Okay. So, as I believe I said before, a runbook is a procedure that is embedded within a dynamic map. It's a series of steps when you get down to it, each step telling NetBrain to run a particular type of automation. So these steps are how we tell NetBrain what to do and tell it to do it, and then the results are recorded within that particular runbook step. Now, a runbook lives within its dynamic map. It cannot be separated from its dynamic map, and it cannot be moved to a different map. It is an intrinsic part of the map. Let's see. Nilsson wants to know, can NetBrain? Yes. We support everything. I think I mentioned that before, but yes, we're vendor agnostic. We do try to support everything. So don't read into the fact that it's mostly Cisco stuff in the test environment. That's just what we happen to be simulating for the moment. We're trying to work up to a more multi-vendor environment for the test, but basically NetBrain, we do try to support everything. And if you come across something that we don't yet support, let us know. We will build support for it. Although how high up the list that goes in terms of priority depends on how many people are asking, or if somebody wants to pay us extra money to make it a specific project. So, but everything will be supported in due course, basically. It's very rare to find something, especially with traditional devices, that we don't yet support these days. Okay, so back to runbooks. So with a runbook, there's two ways that we use this framework. One is if we're just working off the cuff, we open up a blank runbook and start adding steps to it and executing them. And then the runbook is taking the form of automatically building documentation of what exactly did we do and what were the raw results. And then the most important of these results, according to us, we publish into the incident as well. So the incident then links back to the runbook. The other is we can create what's called a runbook template, which is the right way to do something. So it's a predefined set of runbook steps with certain parameters, certain instructions attached, things like that. And then we can load that up and follow that predefined procedure whenever needed. And not just the author can do that, but anybody can follow that procedure very easily. So we can turn a very complex procedure, such as, step 1, pull 3 show commands from 200 devices each and then look for XYZ variables and see how they relate. You can turn that into a QApp or a set of network intents or something like that, and then it becomes hit the button. If anything turns red, notify this team because they need to fix it. So this is the power of automation, because not only does it speed things up, but it, again, shifts workflow to the left, meaning we can actually hand off tasks to people who, let's say, I'm a brand new NOC operator. In terms of networking generally, I still don't really know from my knee from my elbow. You can hand off one of these runbook templates to me and I can do a very complex procedure without really knowing what I'm doing. I'm just hitting the button and seeing what turns red.